Okay, so this is a demo of a fictitious, of course, venture investment fund. Look at how they can use the votes. What's cool about this is basically shows what it can look like for the multiple partners, investment team, finance, etc., and the fact that the vault contains all this information about what's this, and here's, let's say, the team. There's some news here, and also there's the agentic team that is maintaining all of this, right? And they're the ones who created literally this thing here. So what's cool about it is like, let's say that you're a partner, right? And you want to understand what's happening. So the logic here is that you can consume the data, you can create it. So I have multiple scenarios here that I'm going to show, right? That actually you can play with it, right? And of course, this is all versus sending a PDF, sending an email, right? Which is kind of not that good, right? So let's say, for example, you want to consume the data. So you have the pitch deck, which will be here, financial models, the cap table, all that information can now be available here, and you can read it and you can summarize it. For example, again, the AI can provide information, and then again, this should be peer reviewed. I'll show that in a second, and that's kind of the beginning of the data, right? So you can, for example, use this to view the data, to edit. So this is, let's say, information about the company, the materials here. So you can see that this becomes the place where you read this information, and this becomes the place where you can centralize, and you can also create this experience for the users, right? So in this case, also the power, of course, everything is version controlled. So you could see that the data room, the major events that happen here, maybe even version controlled of the actual term sheets, right? The information, and then you can see what changed, etc. And again, this is managed by agents. So a lot of this stuff, it's very easy to then implement and look around it, right? And so this is one where we actually are looking at the decision, right? And how it works. And what's important about this is that this is where the vault takes another level, because here you can actually also make changes. So you can make a change here, and you can say based on X, right? And then basically this will then add information, and it will show here, and then it basically is captured. So the vault not only is to consume information, but you could also write to the vault, and of course it's all version controlled, right? And this is cool about it. Like you can now have multiple views. So for example here, let's say the GV partner gets this information, the investment committee get this data, right? The CFO finance gets different data, so you can start to slice the data, right? According to this, the founder gets maybe this, and the LP gets this, right? So this is where again we can create all sorts of different views for this. We can distribute it, right, much more effectively. Again, we can export the data. So this is like maybe export to deal tracker, export to a spreadsheet, right, or import from a spreadsheet. So again, we can then integrate with a bunch of other stuff. And then like this is the comparison, right? This is the flat PDF that you can have today versus a full version controlled implementation, and that's kind of the difference on this, right? And even you can have the fund, could also be managing this with their own clients, right? With our own sort of investors, right? And of course, the power of this is this all sits in top of a vault, right? So this is the vault I was just showing you, and what you have here is that this is literally all the different pages that you were seeing in the here, but these are actually nicely managed sort of JavaScript and HTML fonts, but also the data, right, is now structured here, right? So you can see that this contains all the evidence, all the materials, kind of in this really nicely structured. The decisions can also be captured in JSON files. Here's the exportation, the data. We even created some infographics programmatically. This was created using Gemini, right, based on the data. And then here's an example. This is what it looked like, right? So you went from, actually that's just the memo, right, on the PDF, right? And that's fundamentally the workflow, right? So this is the power, right? Like but the user doesn't see this. The user just basically sees, this sort of experience, which is what they get when they open the link, right? And that's fundamentally the power of the votes for investment funds.